Hey guys, happy Saturday. It's Hitman23. I'm come on this morning to do a everything video. It's one of my, kind of like all around the world video, different things I've picked up over the last week or so, things have come in the mail, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. My typical Hitman all over the place type of buying. So, first thing I'm going to show is actually this shirt. I was out in California this past summer, out in Northern California, San Francisco area, and I had been here once before years ago. But Amoeba Music, if you're ever in California and you're in San Francisco, and you're into music and you're into old school record stores, go check out Amoeba Music. The one I went to is over in the Haight-Ashbury district, and it's freaking fantastic. It's got everything and anything you can imagine in there. It's a huge store. It's been there for years and years and years and years, and it's just really cool. So I gotta represent my music side and share that. Card wise, I've got a bunch of different things this week. First thing, let's just get right to it. So I do have a little again, I'll call it fledgling or a little modest unopened pack PC. It's nothing crazy. I don't have anything, nuts on the... I think the craziest thing, or probably the best unopened pack I own, is a 93 SP, with the Derek Jeter rookie card. I do have one of those packs sealed. But otherwise, everything I have is pretty much, from the 80s on up. But I just enjoy the unopened product because I really like the artwork and just the packaging that I find very, very attractive. So I actually picked up a couple of hockey packs that I think these are so cool. So I picked up I actually bought a box of 1990 hockey. It was really cheap. I am not a huge hockey fan. I think I'm turning into Dean Gerhardt here. But I'm not a huge hockey fan. I enjoy hockey. I've actually been to a decent amount of games, especially when I lived up in New Hampshire. We used to go watch the Monarchs all the time when they were doing really well, and they were, feeding the Kings, because that was the Los Angeles Kings minor league team. So did some hockey then. I like the old school hockey stuff from the 70s and 80s. Again, that's my wheelhouse, the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s. That's the stuff I like. So I always thought these packs were great looking packs. I love the artwork of the player on there. They just have a really old school feel to them. That's the classic wax pack. So I just picked up a cheap box of that, and I saved a pack out of that. So that's the 1990. I believe this has any rookies in here. The only rookie I think I could think is I think Mike Richter has his rookie card in here, the goalie for the Rangers. And then this is a 1989 Topps hockey pack, and you can see they use that same design, just different color combinations. And I believe they used this design for a few years, up until this point, until 1990. I think in 91 they changed a little bit. This 89 set has, I believe this got the Brian Leach rookie. I'm not sure who else, but just cool looking little pieces for the unopened PC. I try to add to that every once in a while. Next thing I got, this came in the mail finally. It's the 2022 Topps Chrome Platinum Anniversary, just a Don Mattingly base. So chasing those down, very nice there. Card number 6. So, and now I've put my toes into another pool. These are my second and third actual SGC graded cards. I decided I wanted to do a run of this player. And I was like, let me do an SGC run. I really want to start, expanding my horizons a little bit with the different graded cards. Again, still a very small part of my collection, but I really do like the look of these. And secrets here, I'll tell you, I might submit some cards. I'm not sure, but I might. I'm thinking about it. And I'm not a submitter, but I figure for the deal that they're running right now, the $15, it's almost you can't you can't pass it up. And I have some cards that I think I'd like to get slabbed. But again, I'm a homer when it comes to this team. You know it right here, right there, guys. I'm a homer, and I really haven't said much about this player and how much I really appreciated him and loved him. But Joe Theismann, he's my favorite quarterback of all time. I mean, I know it's like, come on, Mike, your favorite. All my favorites are all Redskins. I think he's a very underrated quarterback. He played at Notre Dame. And, he won the Super Bowl for the Redskins. He won an MVP. He was a tough SOB. He was a tough quarterback. I think about, the era when he played, man. He wore that single bar face mask, the last quarterback to do so. And he could run. He could throw. He was just fantastic. And I really don't think he gets the due respect that he deserves as a player. So I picked up his 1978 Topps, and that's kind of a cool, in-action photo. All right, and then I also picked up his 1982 Topps, and there's the Great Gazoo in his all glory, at that old school bar face mask helmet. I love the old ponchos when they used to wear those on the sidelines. He was just a gritty, grinding player, and I totally dig Joe Theismann. So there's the 82. This is the year, the 82-83 season is the year they went to the Super Bowl and beat the Dolphins in that classic, So this is that, that year. Just a great card there too. So, and these just look really nice in these. And I'm not saying anything that nobody already knows, but these look really nice in these slabs. What else? Oh, and then I picked up this, this whole set. It's the 1980 Topps, I guess you would call them Topps Supers. They're just 5x7 basic glossy photos. And it's just a really cool set. It was super duper inexpensive. I think I paid $20 shipped for it. So they're very, easy to get and obtainable. And it's just a cool little, run of that era of baseball in the early 80s. And, you got some players in here that are head scratchers, and you got Hall of Famers. Just a really cool, I think it's a cool little, oddball, off-size set. I like all cards, whether they're regular 2.5 by 3.5 or tobacco cards or these big ones. I like anything that has to do with, with baseball cards and the different forms and products that have been made throughout the years. So I'll just go quickly through it. I actually just, this is a top card. It's the Willie Stargell #1. And you can see it's got like a, it's a glossy photo, and it's got some sort of, it almost looks like a flash burn here. So I went on COMC and I picked up a replacement for this one because that's a little faded, and so I'll get a fresher looking one of those. But just a cool little set. There's 60 cards in the set. There's Michael Jack. So it starts off pretty much with a bang with a bunch of Hall of Famers, Johnny Bench, right? These would be, I guess, really cool for autographs. The backs are blank backs. They come in a white back and a gray back. I got the white back set. I think the gray back set might be a little more collectible. I don't know if you want to say, but I did go on and replace that card as well because it's, very off-cut, off-center. So I got another Jim Palmer coming, Jim Rice. So we got, Hall of Famers, the first 5, first 6, Reggie, and the classic, those aviators. Got to love it. And then Ron Guidry, not Hall of Famer, but just one of the greatest pitchers in Yankees history. Awesome player there. And then we start, Lee Mazzilli. You got to represent. Lee Mazzilli was very hot for the Mets back in the late 70s and early 80s. He was that young player, and he was kind of like the face of the franchise. And you got Don Baylor, right? Very, very good player. Fred Lynn, MVP and AL Rookie of the Year in 1975. First player ever to do so. Excellent player. I wonder, where Boston would have been if they kept him, him and Carlton Fisk and stuff like that, Not that I care because I hate Boston, but, you just wonder. As a baseball fan, you wonder. Kenny Singleton, again, very underrated player, very good player for many years. Of course, Hall of Famer Rod Carew. We all know and love Rod Carew. Steve Garvey, who probably should be in the Hall of Fame. There's George Brett. George Brett always kind of looks, I don't know, burnt out or like washed out in his card. He just looks like he's been through the ringer in a lot of his cards. Tom Seaver, again, we've got some Hall of Famers coming here. Going through some Hall of Famers. Dave King Kong Kingman. All or nothing Dave Kingman. Then we got Dave Parker. Again, Hall of Famer in my eyes. I think this guy should be in the Hall of Fame. Look at the cool old pillbox hat. The Pirates there. That was the year after they won the World Series in '79. You got Hall of Famer Dave Winfield. That's a really nice photo. I like that a lot. It's just a classy looking photo. Pete Rose. Maybe I'll go on in order Petey there because that's a little off center. Nolan Ryan. Yeah, Craig Nettles. Again, great third baseman. Again, I think underappreciated player. It was fantastic for the Yankees. Had a nice career for them. We got Yaz. And we got Tommy John. And George Foster. Again, another guy had a pretty underrated career. I know he ended up his career kind of like on the outs and down, but up until that point, he had a really nice career. He was like the last person to hit 50 home runs. In 1977, I think he had 52 home runs, and he was the last person to have 50 until whoever did it. Again, I can't remember who was the next player to hit 50 after. Maybe it was Albert Bell or something, but it was a while between 50 home run seasons. And he had two really crazy seasons back-to-back in the 70s, in 77 and 78. J.R. Richard, what could have been with him too? I think about that. He was just an amazing pitcher, and he was on the team with Nolan Ryan. And then Mike Scott came in a little bit behind him. I thought, if this guy stayed healthy, because he had a stroke and it was never the same. But, that was a pretty formidable starting rotation. Keith Hernandez, a few years before he came a Met. And we got Bob Horner. I call him the beer league softball player in a baseball uniform. And Eddie Murray, Hall of Famer. Would not want to mess with Eddie Murray. Steve Kemp had a pretty decent start to his career. Played solidly for the Tigers for the first few years, and then he came to the Yankees, didn't do much there, and I think he bounced between the White Sox and the Pirates at the end of his career. But started off as a fairly decent career. Gorman Thomas, Stormin' Gorman, look at that, man. This guy played center field. Does he look like a center fielder to you? If this guy didn't have a keg on the bench with a tap in his mouth in between at bats, I'd be shocked. But this guy was a slugger. He was part of that whole Harvey's Wallbangers early '80s Brewers team, fun team there. Sixto Lezcano. Now we're starting to get to some players who are kind of like, okay. Sixto Lezcano. Bruce Sutter, Hall of Fame reliever. And he had passed away in the last year. Cecil Cooper, again, another really underappreciated player. I think had a really solid career. Could hit, could field, could do it all. Very good player. Very good player. Larry Bowa, very stalwart for the Phillies throughout the 70s and early 80s. Key part of the '80 World Series team. And Larry Bowa, that spunky dude. Al Oliver, again, probably should be in the Hall of Fame. I think we all can agree upon that. The guy had an amazing career and just kind of, fell short, but really should be looked at and, probably be in the Hall of Fame. Ted Simmons made the Hall of Fame, right? Ted Simmons. And Ted's in. Thurman Munson should be in, no doubt. Gary Templeton, all right. They he was traded straight up for Ozzie, so Gary went to the Padres. Ozzie came to the Cardinals, and the rest is history. But Gary Templeton had a pretty solid career. Jerry Koosman, same deal there. Had a very solid career. Came up with Nolan Ryan in the late 60s with the Mets. Had a nice career with the Twins. Darrell Porter, very solid catcher. Demons got to him after a while, but he had he was an all-star, good player, solid player for the Royals. He played for the Brewers and then the Cardinals. I think he was on the Cardinals '82 World Series team. So Darrell Porter, Roy Smalley, his dad played baseball. Again, a solid player for the for the Twins when he first came up. He had some pop in his bat. He was a switch hitter. He played for the Yankees for a short period of time in the early '80s. Craig Swan. Again, this is one of those you're like, okay, Craig Swan. He was a Met for a long time. Jason Thompson started off again, very good career. He played for the Tigers and he played for the Pirates. And I like that because it's got the batting cage in the back there. So again, pretty solid player. Andre Thornton, again too, another solid player for the Cleveland Indians. They were nothing back in the days when he played with them. In the late 70s. He came up with the Cubs in the mid 70s and he went to the Cleveland Indians, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s, and he kind of was like their face of the franchise for a while, and they were just awful. But Andre Thornton was kind of like their star. Rick Manning. Kent Tekulve, look at that. Oh, my God. Oh. Woo, look at that, those glasses. I mean, he was a classic, though. You got to love Kent Tekulve and his, his submariner style pitching. This guy's kind of like a classic. You got those aviators on, Phil Niekro, Hall of Famer. Looking old. Buddy Bell. Again, father played, sons played. Very solid baseball player. Very good baseball player. Randy Jones. He was like something in like the late 70s with the Padres. And then I think the Mets got him in the early 80s, and they thought they were getting, I guess, a good player, and he really didn't do anything for the Mets. Brian Downing with those great aviators. And I always remember, watching, I remember in '82 when the Angels went to the playoffs, and I remember they were talking about him, lifting weights, and how back then it was, baseball players didn't lift weights, right? But he was like one of the, kind of the first guys that you heard and saw, and like he was a big dude, pretty put together about lifting weights. Amos Otis, great center fielder for the Royals. He played for the Mets when he came up. Good, solid player. Rick Bozzetti. Now, this was my head scratcher. I guess they have to have a representation from every team. And in 1980, I guess this is all they could come up with for the Toronto Blue Jays, because I don't think Dave Stieb was quite there yet. I know his 80 Topps cards was his rookie card, but there was no George Bell yet. There was no Lloyd Mosby yet. Or maybe Lloyd Mosby had just come upon the scene, but they chose Rick Bozzetti for their set. So, interesting. Gary Carter, of course, Hall of Famer. Shout out to Carter's kids, my boy Steve. I'm sure you got like every combination and permutation of that card. Larry Parrish of the amazing Montreal Expos. Again, another player who had a very solid career. All right, he was a good player for a long time. Jack Clark. That is a funny card. Or a funny photo, man. Look at I don't know, man. I did not know the Giants wore pillbox style hats back then. I knew the Cardinals did for a very short period of time in the 70s. I didn't know the Giants did. And I'm not even sure if they wore these in games, but that's funny. That's a funny picture. Again, solid player. A big slugger. Bruce Bochy. I think it's Bochy. He was there. Cesar Cedeno. Again, probably like the first... I know Joe Morgan came up with the Colt 45s, and you had, Rusty Staub there in the early years in the 60s. But I think this guy was kind of like the first real superstar of the Astros because they traded Joe Morgan away in the early 70s. So this guy was kind of like it for them. And him and Jose Cruz were like, to me, like, think about the Astros back then. That's who I think of. I think of Cesar Cedeno and I think of Jose Cruz. Chet Lemon. Again, solid player for the Sox and the Tigers. The only Oakland A representative, Dave Revering. I mean, again, back in 1980, yes, it was Rickey Henderson's rookie year for his baseball card, but he hadn't established himself really yet. And I don't know who else they could have picked from that era of the A's to represent, so they picked Dave Revering. So I think that's kind of funny. It's kind of the most unknown player in the whole thing here. Vida Blue. We all know who Vida Blue is. Was a 1971 MVP, Cy Young winner, really solid pitcher. Again, unfortunately, he passed away this past year. And then the fun Davey Lopes, last card, number 60. So, there we go, 60 cards of, some really good Hall of Famers and some really good non-Hall of Famers, and then some, guys you go, who is that, right? But just a fun set, nonetheless. It's very obtainable, very inexpensive. And then the last piece here, I got some stuff that I usually never show. This is a surprise. A friend of mine had sent this to me and my son, but we got them in the mail the other day. And I asked my son if he ordered them. He's like, no, Chris sent them to us. So I was like, oh. So he got a bunch of these old 80s wrestling magazines, which I think are just great. So I have about a stack of like 15 or 20 of them up in a box somewhere, and then he just sent me these. So, back in those days, especially in the 80s, in the 70s and the 80s, and I got into wrestling more into the very early 80s. I lived in the Northeast, so we only got like WWF on TV. I mean, maybe if you had and I didn't even have cable TV when I was a kid. You might have been able to get maybe like AWA but the only way I remember you could only ever see those types of Ric Flair and all the Abdullah the Butcher and all that stuff. You had to get them in magazines. That was the only way really to get it because it was all territorial back then. They had territories. So depending on where you lived, if you lived up in the Northeast like I did, it was WWF. If you lived in the South, you had AWA and NWA and all that stuff, So this is the way to get all your wrestling information in the magazines, right? There was no internet. This is cool. Got Rowdy Roddy Piper. On the back, you got a bloody Dusty Rhodes. Just love that. It's so cool. And that's when wrestling was wrestling, right? This is 1984. Ric Flair on there. I think this might even predate. This might even predate the Horsemen. That's right. I think as the Horsemen started maybe forming in that time period. And you got Barry Windham. He's the uncle of Bray Wyatt, who just passed away. So that's pretty cool. Not that Bray Wyatt passed away, but just the cool cover. And we got Mr. Fuji and Pedro Morales on the back. Look at that. Mr. Fuji's all bloodied up. But these are so cool. Like, this stuff is just so awesome. This is a really cool one. This is a Wrestling Review. And in the middle here, there's a whole piece on the history of wrestling that I'm going to definitely read. It's, starts from the 20s and all. So I'm going to check that out. And look in the back, you got Magnum TA. I never saw these guys wrestle. I never saw Magnum TA wrestle. I never saw Ernie Ladd wrestle. I saw Hacksaw Jim Duggan wrestle, when he came to the WWF. But it's just cool. And you got this one here. It's just a really cool little smattering of different things. You got a couple more here. It's just cool memories of simpler times, right? And we got on there. You got Superstar Billy Graham. On the back, you got Greg the Hammer Valentine, right? that's it, guys. That's what I got this week in the mail. So I hope you enjoyed that. Something a little different, something, a little diverse. And that's all I got. So I'm going to take off. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Enjoy your collections. Excuse me. Wow. All right there. Alrighty then, guys. Take it easy. I'll see you at the next video. May the cardboard gods shine down upon each and every one of you. I will see you at the next video. Take care. Peace and out.